Picture a medieval castle lord sitting on a stone seat built into the castle wall, his waste about to drop 50 feet down a shaft to splash into the moat below, while somewhere in the darkness a man prepares to shovel that same waste into a cart under cover of night. So sit back, grab a cup of tea, and get ready to explore how medieval castles solve the basic human need for sanitation with ingenious engineering. We'll discover why someone had to clean these facilities in the dead of night, examine how waste management shaped castle design and urban planning, and learn what garderobe architecture, Gong farmer guilds, public health laws, and the surprisingly sophisticated systems that kept medieval society from drowning in its own filth tell us about human ingenuity in the face of our most basic biological needs. They called them garderobes, a French word meaning guard robes, because people believed the ammonia smell from urine would kill moths and protect clothing hung nearby. But these medieval toilets were far more than simple holes in castle floors. They represented sophisticated engineering solutions to a fundamental challenge: how to manage human waste in stone fortresses designed for defence. A garderobe was a medieval toilet built into castle walls with a chute dropping waste outside, typically into a moat, river, or cesspit. These weren't primitive facilities, but carefully planned architectural features that balance privacy, defence, comfort, and the grim necessities of waste disposal in an age before modern plumbing. Medieval castle builders faced a complex puzzle. Castles needed to be defensible, which meant thick walls, limited openings, and careful control of access points. Yet every person inside those walls, from the lord and lady to soldiers and servants, needed somewhere to relieve themselves. The solution was the garderobe, a small chamber built into the thickness of castle walls, featuring a stone or wooden seat with a hole that opened onto a vertical shaft. This shaft, angled to prevent climbing, would drop waste outside the castle walls or into specially designed pits. It was engineering born of necessity, refined over centuries of castle construction. The physics of garderobe design reveal medieval builders' practical intelligence. Shafts were carefully angled, not perfectly vertical, which might allow waste to build up or enemies to climb, but slanted at precise angles that ensured waste would slide down, while preventing any possibility of infiltration. Some castles featured elaborate systems where multiple garderobes from different floors connected to a single main shaft, like a primitive sewer system. Others had individual chutes for each garderobe, spreading waste discharge points around the castle perimeter. The best designs incorporated natural water sources, positioning garderobes over rivers or streams that would carry waste away, but someone had to deal with the waste that didn't conveniently wash away. Enter the Gong farmers, perhaps the least enviable profession in medieval society. The name came from the Old English gang, meaning to go, because these workers would announce their approach by shouting "Gong" to warn people they were coming through with their carts of human waste. These men, and they were almost always men, worked exclusively at night, partly to minimize the offensive smell and disruption to daily life, but also because daylight hours were legally forbidden to them in many cities. They were simultaneously essential and reviled, well-paid yet social outcasts. The life of a Gong farmer was dangerous, difficult, and surprisingly well-regulated. They worked in teams, usually 3 or 4 men, with specialized roles. One would descend into the cesspit with a shovel and bucket, filling containers that his partners would haul up with ropes. Another would manage the carts and horses that transported waste outside city walls. The work required physical strength, strong stomachs, and careful coordination. Cesspit gases could kill a man in minutes if he wasn't careful. Many Gong farmers died on the job, suffocated by fumes or drowned in semi-liquid waste. Medieval cities developed elaborate legal frameworks around waste management. London's Assize of Nuisance, dating from the 13th century, records hundreds of cases involving cesspits, overflowing latrines, and disputes between neighbours over waste disposal. The law specified minimum distances between cesspits and wells, at least 2 feet of earth, regulated the construction of privies, and set fines for those who dumped waste in streets or rivers. These weren't merely suggestions. Medieval authorities understood that poor sanitation meant disease, and disease in crowded cities could kill thousands. The guild system that governed medieval trades extended to Gong farmers, By the 14th century, major cities had organised Gong farmer guilds with apprenticeship systems, standard rates and quality controls. The London Guild, for instance, set prices based on the size of cesspits and the distance waste had to be carried. A standard cesspit cleaning might cost 2 shillings, several days' wages for a common labourer, but Gong farmers could earn 6 pence per night, making them among the better-paid manual workers. The Guild also regulated working hours, typically 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., required specific safety equipment, and mandated that waste be transported in covered carts to prevent spillage. The engineering of cesspits themselves deserves attention. These weren't simply holes in the ground, but carefully constructed chambers designed to contain waste, while preventing structural collapse and groundwater contamination. The best cesspits were lined with stone or brick, waterproofed with clay, and built with vaulted ceilings to support the weight above. Some featured multiple chambers, allowing one section to be cleaned while others remained in use. Overflow channels directed excess liquid to soak away pits or streams, though this often led to disputes when one person's overflow became another's problem. Castle garderobes posed unique challenges compared to urban latrines. While city dwellers might share communal cesspits that were cleaned periodically, castle waste management had to function continuously, sometimes during sieges lasting months. The solution often involved positioning garderobes over natural features, rivers, cliffs, or the castle moat. Dover Castle's garderobes, for instance, discharged directly onto the cliff face, where rain and weather would eventually wash waste into the sea. But this created vulnerabilities. During the siege of Château Gaillard in 1204, French soldiers famously entered the castle by climbing up the garderobe chute, a dirty but effective strategy. Medieval people weren't oblivious to the health risks of poor sanitation. Medical texts like the Regimen Sanitatis Salernitanum, 12th century, explicitly linked foul air from cesspits to disease. The miasma theory, the belief that disease spread through bad air, actually led to some effective public health measures, even if the reasoning was flawed. Cities required cesspits to be covered, banned the dumping of human waste in streets, and regulated the location of public latrines. These measures, based on incorrect medical theories, nonetheless reduced disease transmission by limiting contact with human waste. The social hierarchy of medieval society extended even to toilets. Castle lords enjoyed private garderobes, often heated by proximity to fireplace flues and equipped with wooden seats for comfort. Some featured windows for ventilation and light, making them almost pleasant spaces. The Tower of London's royal garderobes included decorative elements, carved stone seats, painted walls, and even primitive air freshening systems using herbs and perfumes. In contrast, common soldiers and servants used communal latrines or simple pots that required manual emptying. For the wealthy, the close stool offered an alternative to cold stone garderobes. These portable toilets, essentially boxes with holes and removable pots, could be used in any room and featured padded seats, armrests, and sometimes elaborate decoration. Henry VIII's close stool, covered in velvet and studded with gold nails, travelled with him between palaces. The groom of the stool, who attended to the king's toileting needs, became one of the most powerful court positions with intimate access to the monarch during vulnerable moments. Urban sanitation presented different challenges from castle waste management. Medieval cities packed thousands of people into confined spaces, each producing waste that had to go somewhere. Public latrines, often built over rivers or on bridges, served those without private facilities. London Bridge's public latrine, projecting over the Thames, could accommodate dozens of users simultaneously. The rushing water below carried waste away, though this merely transferred the problem downstream. Other cities built public latrines over communal cesspits, which required regular emptying by gong farmers. The raker lanes of medieval cities tell their own story. These narrow alleys, specifically designed for cesspit access, allowed gong farmers to reach backyard pits without tramping through houses. Building regulations required properties to maintain raker lane access, and blocking these passages brought heavy fines. The lanes themselves became notorious. Dark, stinking passages avoided by respectable citizens but essential for urban sanitation. Some survive today in old European cities, their original purpose forgotten, but their awkward placement still puzzling modern urban planners. Monasteries developed some of the most sophisticated medieval sanitation systems. The reredourter, the monastic latrine, often featured rows of seats over a channel flushed by diverted streams. At Fountains Abbey in Yorkshire, the monks constructed an elaborate system where water from the River Skell flushed waste from latrines, serving over 200 monks and lay brothers. The Great Drain, a vaulted tunnel large enough to walk through, carried waste half a mile downstream before discharging it. This system, built in the 12th century, functioned effectively for over 400 years. The intersection of sanitation and defence created unique architectural solutions. Castle builders had to ensure garderobe chutes couldn't be climbed by enemies, while still allowing waste to fall freely. Some designs included iron bars across chute openings, spaced to allow waste through but prevent human passage. Others incorporated overhanging machicolations, projecting structures that allowed waste and boiling oil or stones to be dropped on attackers. The garderobe tower at Caerphilly Castle in Wales featured multiple defensive garderobes positioned to cover potential climbing routes. Winter brought special challenges to medieval sanitation. Garderobe chutes could freeze solid, backing up waste into living spaces. Castle residents sometimes had to break ice blockages with long poles, a particularly unpleasant duty. Urban cesspits could freeze too, making cleaning impossible until spring thaw. The build-up of waste during harsh winters contributed to the devastating disease outbreaks that often accompanied spring, as melting snow and ice released accumulated filth into water supplies. The economics of waste had unexpected dimensions. Human waste, mixed with animal dung and organic matter, became valuable fertilizer called night soil. Gong farmers sold their collected waste to farmers outside city walls, creating a circular economy where urban waste nourished crops that fed city dwellers. This practice, while economically sensible, could spread disease when vegetables grown in human waste were eaten raw. Some cities regulated which crops could be fertilized with night soil, prohibiting its use on vegetables typically consumed uncooked. Medieval attitudes toward bodily functions differed dramatically from modern sensibilities. Privacy, as we understand it, barely existed. Noble households might include dozens of people sharing limited latrine facilities. Chamber pots were emptied by servants who thought nothing of handling their master's waste. Public urination was common, though increasingly regulated in cities, and even nobility would relieve themselves in palace corridors when necessary. Yet medieval people weren't without modesty. Garderobe doors, when they existed, provided visual privacy, and social conventions governed appropriate behaviour around bodily functions. The chamber pot, that humble ceramic vessel, played a crucial role in medieval sanitation. Every household owned several, from simple earthenware pots for servants to elaborate decorated vessels for nobility. The contents were typically thrown from windows with a warning cry of "Gardez l'eau," watch out for water, which evolved into the British "Gardez l'eau." Cities passed ordinances requiring people to shout warnings before emptying pots, and pedestrians learned to hug walls and watch upper windows when walking medieval streets. The practice of throwing waste from windows persisted into the early modern period, contributing to the notoriously filthy conditions of medieval and Renaissance cities. The development of civic infrastructure for waste management marked a crucial evolution in urban planning. By the 14th century, major cities employed official rakers or scavengers responsible for keeping streets clean. These municipal employees, distinct from Gong farmers who dealt with human waste, collected animal dung, food waste, and general refuse. London divided into wards, each responsible for maintaining cleanliness within its boundaries. Householders paid taxes to support these services and faced fines for dumping waste in streets rather than approved locations. Disease outbreaks repeatedly demonstrated the lethal consequences of poor sanitation. The Black Death of 1347 to 1351, which killed perhaps a third of Europe's population, spread rapidly through cities with inadequate waste management. While medieval people didn't understand disease transmission, they observed that filthy conditions correlated with higher mortality. Post-plague regulations across Europe tightened sanitation requirements, increased fines for violations, and expanded municipal waste collection services. These measures, born of crisis, established precedents for public health legislation that evolved into modern sanitation codes. The castle garderobe left unexpected archaeological evidence. cesspit excavations reveal intimate details of medieval life, diet, health and daily habits preserved in mineralized waste. Analysis of latrine deposits from Dudley Castle revealed a diet heavy in meat and fish among the nobility, with parasite evidence suggesting undercooked food. Seeds from imported fruits indicate trade connections, while medicinal plant remains suggest attempts to treat digestive ailments. These humble deposits provide data unavailable from any written source, making medieval toilets valuable archaeological resources. Regional variations in sanitation reflected local geography, climate and cultural practices. Italian cities, inheriting Roman engineering traditions, often maintained more sophisticated sewer systems than their northern counterparts. Venice's unique situation required creative solutions. Waste went directly into canals, relying on tidal action for removal. German cities favoured elaborate wooden structures projecting over rivers, while English towns typically used cesspit systems requiring regular cleaning. These differences influenced urban development patterns that persist in old European cities today. The legal disputes over cesspits reveal medieval property rights complexity. The London Assize of Nuisance records countless cases, neighbours suing over overflowing cesspits, tenants demanding landlords maintain latrines, and property owners fighting over shared waste facilities. One 1301 case involved Alice Wade suing her neighbour because his cesspit leaked into her cellar, ruining stored goods. The court ordered the neighbour to repair his pit and compensate Alice, establishing precedents for property damage from sanitation failures that influenced English common law. Social stigma attached to sanitation workers extended beyond Gong farmers. Night soil men, cesspit builders, and latrine cleaners formed a distinct underclass, often living in specific neighbourhoods and marrying within their professions. Yet their essential service granted certain privileges. Gong farmers could demand right-of-way through any property to access cesspits, enter walled cities after curfew, and claim protection from assault while working. Some grew wealthy enough to purchase property and rise in social status, though the stigma of their former profession often lingered generations. The evolution of garderobe design reflects medieval architectural innovation. Early Norman castles featured simple shafts, but later designs incorporated sophisticated features. Double-door systems created airlocks to minimize odor. Angled seats improved comfort and reduced splashback. Some garderobes included washing facilities, a basin and water jug for hand cleaning. The finest examples, like those at Conway Castle in Wales, featured multiple seats in spacious chambers, suggesting social aspects to toileting that seem foreign to modern sensibilities. Medieval medical understanding of digestion and waste influenced sanitation practices. Physicians believed regular bowel movements essential for health, prescribing elaborate regimens of diet, exercise, and purgatives. The wealthy consulted doctors about their stool's colour, consistency, and frequency, considered important diagnostic tools. This medical attention to waste, while based on flawed humoral theory, encouraged better sanitation among those who could afford it. Ironically, the poor, with less access to medical care, often suffered less from over-medication and purging than their social superiors. The connection between castle garderobes and fashion extends beyond moth prevention. Medieval clothing's complexity, multiple layers, long robes, and elaborate fastenings, made using latrines challenging. Garderobe design accommodated these realities with wider seats and more spacious chambers than modern toilets. Some featured hooks for hanging outer garments and shelves for removing accessories. The practical requirements of using a garderobe in full court dress influenced both fashion and architecture, creating feedback loops between clothing design and sanitation facilities. Siege warfare's impact on sanitation created desperate situations. Castles designed to withstand months-long sieges needed waste management systems that could function without external cleaning. When garderobes discharged into moats, the accumulating waste created horrific conditions but also additional defence. Attackers faced not just water, but sewage-filled obstacles. During extended sieges when normal cleaning became impossible, castles might seal garderobes and rely entirely on portable containers, creating internal health crises that could force surrender as effectively as starvation. The sensory reality of medieval sanitation challenges modern imagination. even the best-maintained castle or city reeked by today's standards. The combination of human waste, animal dung, rotting food, and industrial byproducts created a miasma that medieval people simply accepted. Wealthy individuals carried pomanders, perforated balls containing aromatic substances, while commoners relied on strong-smelling herbs. The development of perfume-making in medieval Europe owes much to attempts to mask sanitation odours, creating an industry that outlasted the conditions that spawned it. Public health crises repeatedly demonstrated sanitation's importance. The 1348 Ordinance of Edward III blamed plague partly on filth and nastiness in London streets, ordering immediate clean-up. Similar proclamations across Europe linked disease to dirt, even if the causal mechanisms remained mysterious. These crisis responses, while temporarily effective, rarely produced lasting change. Cities cleaned up after epidemics, only to slide back into filthy conditions once immediate danger passed. The cycle of crisis, reform and regression characterized medieval urban sanitation for centuries. The transformation of waste into resource extended beyond agricultural fertilizer. Urine, collected from public latrines, supplied essential chemicals for various industries. Tanners used urine in leather preparation. Dyers needed it for fixing colours. Fullers cleaned wool with it. These industries created demand for human waste, leading to organised collection systems. Public urinals in cloth-producing towns featured collection vessels rather than drainage, with the accumulated urine sold to industrial users. This economic value helped justify the expense of maintaining public facilities. Castle garderobe placement required careful strategic planning. Architects balanced multiple factors: defensive requirements, prevailing winds, proximity to living spaces, and structural integrity. The best placements utilised corner towers, where waste could fall outside the main walls without weakening defensive positions. Some castles featured garderobe towers, entire structures dedicated to sanitation, connected to main buildings by covered passages. These specialised towers concentrated smell and maintenance requirements, while maximising defensive architecture in primary structures. The role of water in medieval sanitation extended beyond flushing waste. Castle builders diverted streams through kitchens and latrines when possible, creating primitive but effective sewage systems. Urban engineers constructed channels carrying water from rivers through city streets, flushing waste toward designated collection points. These systems required constant maintenance. Blockages from solid waste, illegal connections, and structural failures plagued medieval water engineers. Yet where they functioned properly, water-based sanitation dramatically improved public health. Medieval innovations in cesspit construction addressed structural and environmental challenges. Engineers developed multi-chamber systems, allowing rotation between active and resting chambers. Overflow pipes directed excess liquid to secondary pits or drainage fields. Ventilation shafts reduced dangerous gas accumulation. Some advanced designs incorporated sloped floors, facilitating cleaning and drainage channels, preventing groundwater infiltration. These engineering solutions, developed through trial and error over centuries, established principles still used in modern septic system design. The social rituals around medieval toileting reveal cultural attitudes toward bodily functions. Despite the lack of privacy by modern standards, elaborate etiquette governed latrine use. Higher-ranking individuals had precedence. Conversation while using communal facilities was common among equals but forbidden between different social ranks. Some garderobes featured multiple seats facing each other, suggesting social aspects to elimination that seem bizarre today. These customs reinforce social hierarchies even in humanity's most levelling moments. The gendered dimensions of medieval sanitation deserve examination. Women faced particular challenges in male-dominated spaces like castles and universities. Female-specific facilities were rare. Women often had to share latrines with men or rely on chamber pots in private rooms. Menstruation added complications barely addressed in historical records. Some convents developed sophisticated facilities for nuns, including private cells with individual garderobes, but these were exceptional. The general lack of accommodation for female needs reflects broader medieval gender inequalities. children's sanitation needs received little architectural consideration. Medieval sources suggest children use chamber pots until old enough to manage adult facilities safely. The height and size of garderobe openings posed real dangers. Accounts exist of children falling into cesspits and drowning. Wealthy households might provide child-sized close stools, but most children learned early to navigate adult-sized facilities. This casual attitude toward child safety around sanitation hazards reflects different medieval concepts of childhood and risk. The environmental impact of medieval waste disposal had long-lasting consequences. Centuries of dumping human waste into rivers created persistent pollution. Archaeological excavations reveal soil contamination layers corresponding to medieval occupation. Heavy metals from industrial processes, concentrated in human waste, accumulated in agricultural soils fertilized with night soil. Some European agricultural regions still show elevated contamination traceable to medieval waste disposal practices. These environmental legacies remind us that sanitation decisions echo across centuries. The decline of castle building and rise of gunpowder warfare influenced sanitation design. Renaissance palaces, less concerned with defense, could incorporate more convenient and comfortable facilities. The transition from vertical garderobes to horizontal drainage systems reflected changing architectural priorities. Country houses of the early modern period often featured elaborate water-based sanitation systems, impossible in defensive castles. This evolution from fortress to residence paralleled improvements in waste management technology and comfort. Medieval responses to sanitation challenges demonstrated remarkable ingenuity given available technology. Without pumps, pipes, or chemical treatments, medieval engineers created functional systems using gravity, water flow, and manual labor. Their solutions, while often smelly, sometimes dangerous, and occasionally catastrophic, kept cities and castles habitable for centuries. The Gong farmers, rakers, and cesspit cleaners who maintained these systems deserve recognition as essential workers who made medieval urban civilization possible. Modern archaeological techniques continue revealing new insights into medieval sanitation. Ground-penetrating radar identifies lost cesspit locations. Chemical analysis of cesspit contents reveals diet, disease, and industrial activities. DNA extraction from ancient parasites traces disease evolution and transmission routes. These scientific approaches transform medieval toilets from objects of squeamish humor into valuable historical resources, providing data about daily life unavailable from written sources. The legacy of medieval sanitation extends into modern urban planning. Many European cities still follow medieval street patterns dictated by cesspit access and drainage requirements. Building codes requiring setbacks from property lines echo medieval regulations about cesspit placement. The principle of municipal responsibility for waste management, established in medieval cities, underlies modern sanitation services. Even the word loo, British slang for toilet, derives from the medieval warning, "Gardez l'eau." What can we learn from medieval sanitation? First, that human ingenuity finds solutions even to the most basic and unpleasant challenges. Medieval engineers, working without modern technology, created systems that functioned for centuries. Second, that public health requires collective action. Individual cesspits mean nothing if your neighbour's overflows into your well. Third, that the workers who handle society's waste deserve both fair compensation and respect for their essential service. The medieval period sanitation solutions seem primitive by modern standards, yet they represented significant advances over earlier eras. The Romans had built elaborate sewer systems, but medieval society lacked the centralized authority and resources for such projects. Instead, medieval communities developed decentralized solutions adapted to local conditions. These pragmatic approaches, while imperfect, maintained urban life through centuries of political instability and technological limitations. As you finish your tea and reflect on this malodorous journey through medieval sanitation, consider how future generations might judge our waste management. Will they marvel at our flush toilets and sewage treatment plants, or shake their heads at our short-sightedness? Medieval people did their best with available resources, creating solutions that seem simultaneously ingenious and appalling. Their successes and failures remind us that managing human waste remains one of civilization's fundamental challenges, one that every society must solve anew. The castle garderobes stand empty now, their shafts sealed or crumbling. The Gong farmers' carts no longer rumble through nighttime streets. Modern plumbing has eliminated the immediate sensory assault of medieval sanitation, yet the underlying challenges remain: how to manage waste sustainably, how to protect public health, and how to ensure the essential workers who handle our refuse receive appropriate recognition. In wrestling with these issues, we continue conversations begun in medieval council chambers and guild halls, seeking solutions to problems as old as settled civilization itself. The story of medieval sanitation is ultimately about human adaptability and social organization. Faced with biological necessities and technological limitations, medieval society created complex systems balancing individual needs with collective welfare. The castle garderobe and urban cesspit, the noble's close stool and the commoner's public latrine, the Gong farmer's cart and the raker's lane, all represent human responses to unavoidable realities. Their solutions weren't perfect, but they worked well enough to sustain growing cities and populous castles through centuries of change. In the end, that pragmatic success may be the most important lesson medieval sanitation offers our modern world.